Hi, how's everyone doing today? This is Amy Hamilton, the project manager. Life is a project. I am hoping everybody's doing well out there. Today we are going to be talking about earned value management. As usual, I'll be taking looks into the comments field to make sure I am capturing questions that you guys have. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. I did a post on this last week on our blog site. And what we're going to be discussing is the importance of earned value management to the controlling phase of your project. So the first thing you need to do is be able to calculate your earned value management. If you're taking the PMP exam, this is a really important thing that you're going to get questioned on, and you need to know all these formulas. Once you become a PMP, you really don't need to know these off the top of your head, but there are some really great project management tools and apps out there that you can use that are going to calculate this for you. Most people out there are using Microsoft Word or some other form of that. So go ahead and when you set up your initial project in Microsoft project, make sure that you're getting those set up so that you can use the earned value management features. The first thing that we're going to talk about is planned value. And what is planned value? This is the variable for the approved budget of the work schedule. This is what you're going to be completing. The PV is also called the budgeted cost of work, which is the BCWS. And these terms are interchangeable, and you will need to know all these for when you take your PMP examination. And the PV of each task is basically what was the budget for that task, and then what was the actual budget for that task. So to calculate PV, what you need is you need the planned completed percentage by the BAC, which is, once again, your budget at the work completion. So an example of this is probably easier. And if you have the article from last week, it'll help you to follow along. But if you're using any kind of project management examination manual, you'll be able to get access to all this. And so really the best thing to do is just keep calculating these things over and over until you get them really right. And if you're taking the PMP examination, go ahead, write out all of your different calculations right in the beginning on a sheet of paper, and then as you take the examination, you can say, oh, I need to calculate PV, or I need to know what BAC is or BCWS is. So the BAC for in this example is 120,000 US dollars, and you are halfway through the year of your project, which is 6 months. So 6 months out of the year, and you have 50% of the work completed. So this is 50% of 120,000, which is in 5 over 100. And times 120,000, which gets you to 60,000. So at that point, if your boss said to you, hey, you're in the controlling phase of your project, what is your planned value? And you could say it is $60,000. So that's how you calculate your PV. And like I said, what you want to do is when you set up your Microsoft project in the beginning for your project, make sure that you have where you should be at each of your milestones. The next one is going to be your earned value. This is the approved budget for work actually completed to date. So this is your BCWP, which is your budgeted cost of work performed. The way you're going to calculate earned value is the percent of work completed by the BAC, which we already covered before. So for this example, 50% of the BAC, so 50 of 120,000, and once again, the answer is 60,000, but that's just a coincidence in this case. Do not think that just because your PV was 60,000 that your EV is going to be 60,000. This might not always be the case. This happens to just be this way for these two examples. The next part that we're going to talk about is the actual cost. This is the cost incurred for the work completed to this date. This is referred to as the actual cost of work performed, or ACWP. And like I said, this is a lot of acronyms, and I know it is. There isn't any other way to do it other than just take out some cheat sheets, start memorizing them, and start learning them, because it's just the way project management is one of those things that you have to study and you have to learn on your own. So what you want to do is you want to look at your SV, which is your schedule variance, and your scheduled performance index, which is your SPI. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about how do you calculate your schedule variance. This is the difference between the amount of budgeted work and the work that you actually accomplished. So your SV is your EV minus your PV. So we already covered how do you calculate your EV, how do you calculate your PV, and then that's how you get your SV. So if the SPV is positive, what you know is that your schedule ahead of schedule. If your SV is negative, you are behind schedule. And if you are neutral, then what that means is that you are right on schedule. So what is your SPI then? Your SPI is the ratio of the budget to work performed. So on a ratio, your SPI is your BCWP divided by your BCWS. And you can calculate this also, your cost variance and your cost performance index, your CPI. So the CPI is going to be exactly the same as what you learned for your SPI. But instead of looking at your schedule, you're looking at your cost. So if you have a CV that's positive, you are under budget on your project. If you have a negative, it means that you are over budget. And if it's zero, it means that you're exactly on track with what you're doing with your project. And the way that you're calculating this is it's SPI equals BCWP divided by BCWS. So this is kind of a quick summary of how do you calculate all of these. But the real question now is, what do you do with it? So you're in the controlling phase of your project and you calculate it, and now what you've discovered is that you are over budget. What adjustments can you make to your project to deal with this? And this is really why you want to know what these are. So maybe you're over budget, but you're actually ahead of schedule. That's actually a good thing to have sometimes. Maybe what you need to look at is where there are cost overruns with a vendor. Do you need to switch vendors? Is it a supplier? Are materials costing more? A lot of times this will happen where you calculate the technology that you're going to need in IT, and then the cost goes up for some of the equipment. Is it shipping costs and transit costs? So you need to figure this out. If you're over budget, what can you do? And remember, bad news never ever gets better in time. So if you are over budget, you need to tell your project sponsor and your management as soon as possible. Do not wait. Bad news does not get better. But also make sure you're coming to them with a plan. How can you get this better? What can you do? What suggestions do you have? Do never ever go to your boss and just say, hey, we're over budget and I don't know what to do. That doesn't work so well. The other thing you want to look at is the schedule. So if you've figured this out and you realize that your CV is negative, what are you going to do about it? You really want to look at, how can you get back on schedule? Is there maybe some surge people that you could hire and you could get the work done faster? Is it a matter of, we talked about project handoff the other week, is there one department that's getting really bogged down? How can you adjust to this? So these are things that you want to be looking at, is how can you make sure that you can get your schedule back on track, and make sure that when you're doing the original scheduling that you're putting in your flow and your slack time and you know your critical path. And if it's on the critical path and it's late, then you're really going to be having a hard problem. So you want to make sure that you know all the dependencies, that you've calculated all that from the beginning. And then in this controlling phase of the project, what you need to do is take some looks. One of the things you might have done in the beginning too is a risk registry. And you might have said, hey, at this milestone, what do I do if my schedule is late? At this milestone, what do I do if I'm over budget? So you want to be thinking of these throughout the entire project cycle. And then when you're getting to the controlling phase, this is something that should hopefully not be that hard. But like I said, if it is, if you're behind schedule, if you're over budget, you need to go to your management first thing and let them know, because it never ever gets better to wait with time. So I've tried to answer a lot of your questions concerning earned value management in a very short amount of time. I appreciate everybody here. I'm looking at some of your questions. I see your question about Primavera, and to be honest, I have never used Primavera. I know it's one of the big projects management software out there. I have used Microsoft Project and Microsoft Project Server. That's the software I'm familiar with, but I know Primavera has the same ability to do these calculations. Are there any additional questions out there on earned value management? Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's time. Remember, this is Amy Hamilton, the project manager, Life as a Project. I appreciate you guys, and I'll be talking to you guys again in 2 weeks. Have a great day.